And sisters, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. There was a scholar of the law who stood up to test Jesus and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" He said in reply, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." He replied to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." But because he wished to justify himself, he said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. They stripped and beat him and went off, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him up on his own animal, took him to an inn, and cared for him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instruction, 'Take care of him. If you spend more than I have given you, I shall repay you on my way back.' Which of these 3, in your opinion, was neighbor to the robber's victim?" He answered, "The one who treated him with mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." The Gospel of the Lord. Good morning. The phrase Good Samaritan has become part of our everyday language. In 2016, we would define a Good Samaritan as a generous person who is always helping people who are in trouble without thinking about it. There are even hospitals that have been named the Good Samaritan. In doing some research, I found out that in the time of Jesus, the word good and Samaritan did not mix together, just like oil and water do not mix together. This would have been especially true for a devout Jewish person like Jesus and his audience. Even though the Samaritans and the Jewish people were related in the religious beliefs of one God and the Mosaic law, the Jewish people resented the Samaritans because they had intermarried and had adopted some of the cultures of the people who invaded them hundreds of years before the time of Jesus. The Samaritans, on the whole, were considered so much worse in the Jewish people's minds than even us, the Gentiles, which means people who are not of Jewish origin. Now back to the parable that Jesus shared with his friends and followers, all of whom were devout Jews, in the question of, who is your neighbor? Let me begin by sharing a story with you that happened a while ago right here in Williamsville, New York. I have shared this story in the past, so if you have heard it, please bear with me. The story I share with you is told from the eyes of an older woman in her mid-60s named Susan, as she lies on the side of the road right here on Mill Street by Sheridan Drive. She was unable to move because she is pinned under her hover-around chair, which flipped over. Now, it was very late at night, about 1 a.m, and Susan was on her way back from Wegmans, where she had gone to purchase some groceries. She lives at the St. Mary's complex on Mill Street in a senior citizens apartment. She, along with some of the other residents, shop at that time because there is less traffic and they can travel uninterrupted down Mill Street in their hover-around chairs to avoid the bumps and cracks that are usually part of the sidewalks. Susan had made too sharp of a turn and flipped the motorized chair onto its side. She was pinned under the chair and spilled her groceries. If that wasn't bad enough, Susan only has one leg because of complications of her diabetes, and she's a bit overweight. She lay there on the side of Mill Street on that chilly night crying and thinking that this was going to be her last night on earth and that God had forsaken her because she had laid in that position for over 2 hours. More than 5 cars had traveled past her, slowed down, but never stopped to help her. Then, there were 2 young adults who were coming from Glen Falls Park. They slowed down, pulled over, and stopped. The young woman told her boyfriend, "I think there is a person there." They got out of their car and found Susan, who was crying because she couldn't believe her good fortune, that God had not forsaken her and finally sent someone to help her. The young couple picked up her motorized chair and helped Susan back on it. As the young woman made sure Susan was not injured, her boyfriend picked up the groceries that had spilled out on Mill Street. The young couple carried the groceries and walked alongside of Susan in her hover-around chair, helping her get back into her apartment at St. Mary's. You see, my friends, Susan, like the victim in the parable, was unable to resist and had to accept God's mercy from a stranger, a person they least expected. In the gospel, it was a Samaritan, and for Susan, it was a young couple returning from a romantic walk in the park. The young couple and the Samaritan acted the way they did because it was the right thing to do, not for any other reason, not for financial reasons or feel-good reasons. The young couple lived out the point of the parable that we each are called to live, showing the love of God to all who are in need, whoever they may be, wherever they might be. These actions may be awkward, difficult, or inconvenient. However, the Samaritan, as well as the young couple, did not appear to have any difficulty extending kindness to those less fortunate. At the end of the parable, Jesus asked the scholar of the law, "Which of these, in your opinion, was the neighbor?" The scholar answered, "The one who treated him with mercy." Jesus said to him, "And to each one of us, go and do likewise." Our charge is not to give just lip service to the message. We cannot just say it. We must actually take action, as a young couple did. The actions that I shared with you in that short little story. So as we gather around the table of the Lord, let us ask Jesus to help us with our unbelief and to show to everyone the unexpected mercy and grace that God gives each one of us. A God who used many, many unworthy people, sometimes the most unlikely ones, people who you may not even like, to share the grace of God with us. Our God is a God of new life who brings hope even out of terrible situations and circumstances, who turns death into life. Let us spend this week looking at our responses to situations that we are faced with in the light and charge given to us by Jesus and demonstrated for us by the young couple. And may God grant us the peace that this world cannot.
Good morning, everyone. You get homily part 2 now. Not really. I will only keep you a few moments, but by request of our diocese, I'd like to share some information with you this morning, and to do so really perhaps to couch it in the gospel you just heard, and kind of implied by Deacon Michael's homily. There's a word that was used in the gospel today, same word that was used in the gospel last Sunday, same word as used in the gospel the Sunday before. And each time that word was used, a very similar image. The word is go. Go. What did we hear in the gospel today? Go and be merciful, just like the Samaritan was, huh? And Deacon's homily, basically that young couple heard the word go. Go and help that woman, go. And last week we heard Jesus give the clear direction to the disciples, go. Go and teach, go and heal, go and expel demons. And the week before we heard Jesus tell, go and announce, the kingdom of God is at hand. And that word, that image to go is one that I'd like to share with you, as our bishop is calling us to the exact same thing. Perhaps he himself wouldn't use the word go, but that's basically what it is. He's telling us to go and do something. And what he is calling us to is a project called Upon This Rock. Some of you have heard the term, and certainly I've written about it in Spirit and Life, the last 2 issues, and it's been in the news a little. And some of you have had private meetings with one of the priests already. Some are scheduled to come, and at some point all of us will be. And today, really the beginning of the invitation for us all to go and do something. And Upon This Rock is really about the ministry of our church, the ministry of our diocese at this point in time. And I often think, about my own grandparents and great-grandparents who heard that word go. They were in Poland, so they got on a boat and came over. And when they took that word go, they got here, they built our church, they built our school. And when I hear that word go, sometimes I look at some of you because you were here from the first shovel of dirt, and you heard that word go onto Maple Road, and build that church, build that school. And I often think, I've never built a church, a school, a hospital. I've inherited all of these things. I've never been called by my church to really sacrifice, to go and build or do. But our bishop is calling us to go right now and reflect upon ministry in the diocese. And about 2 years ago, he began this study to look at what we've been doing and what we need to do. And the bishop has called all of us now to go and to get to this campaign called Upon This Rock, which is about ministry in the parish level as well as ministry in the diocese as a whole. And, if you scratch anything long enough, you get a dollar sign, And it's really a fund drive to fund our ministries in the parish and the diocese, not only now, but for the generations to come. And part of the Upon This Rock campaign is for the parish of St. Gregory the Great. Each parish is called to the same, so for their individual parish. And you might say, well, what do we really need at St. Greg's? We don't need anything at St. Greg's. How many of you think the kneelers are shot? Look at the benches when the sun hits them. I can see where they're shiny and where they're dull. It's been 17 years since the church has really been looked at. Those are 2 simple projects, expensive ones. We are missing a baptismal font in our church. Right now we use a glass punch bowl on a plywood cart. We should really have something more fitting the dignity of the sacrament in our parish than that. We have needs in the school, particularly for space, and the list can go on, and as we unfold this campaign, you'll learn about them all, but there are needs here. Part of This campaign will address the needs in each individual parish, our own included, and some, the diocese. We have needs for ongoing evangelization. You know, we just hired a director of the new evangelization. We will need to train many of our people through the diocese to do that work, to go out for those who have left the faith or no longer practice. The ongoing need for development of our catechists. And you know, Joan Rishmiller's here at Mass. She knows that every year the teachers go to learn how to teach and learn our faith themselves. The development of proper communication in this period of time, and a brand new ministry, the Mother Teresa Home, which is a home for pregnant teenage girls, brand new ministry in the diocese. The ongoing needs of Christ the King Seminary to not only refurbish the campus, but also to provide for the future generations of priests to be trained. The health care for the retired diocesan priests. The retirement fund for religious does not include us diocesan priests. And right now we're at the point where we probably have more diocesan priests retired than in active ministry. And we have a responsibility to provide for their health care. St. Joseph's Cathedral, the upkeep of the cathedral, and with young people moving downtown, the need for ministry therein. The endowment for Catholic Charities. We were some $70,000 short here at St. Greg's this year for Catholic Charities. And Catholic Charities struggles each and every year now. It's no longer necessarily the drive that never fails, as dubbed by Clint Buman years ago. The expansion of Catholic education, creating a diocesan system for tuition assistance, which does not exist now, and the expansion of science, technology, religion, engineering, arts, and mathematics in our Catholic schools, as well as the needs of campus ministry on the college level. These are just some of the elements that the bishop is calling us to go and do. And so in the coming weeks and months, all of us will hear more and more about this, and as perhaps you get a phone call to come and meet with one of the priests or parishioners who are assisting us, please, come and listen and learn. And please encourage your own mind, heart, and soul to think, what can you do in this place and time for the furtherance of the gospel, not only now, but as we pass it on for the generations to come. I thank you all and wish you a great day and a great weekend.